So you went to the shop again? Who do you think you are? I said no wife of mine will work. You want to be independent?
You want to be a boss? I will break that pride today. Come here and take your punishment.
Amaka sat at her vanity mirror, applying heavy foundation to cover the faint yellowing bruise on her jawline. She had been married to Chief Segun for 15 years. To the outside world, she was a lucky woman. She had 4 handsome boys and a husband who provided everything. But to Amaka, the house was not a home. It was a high-security prison where her spirit was slowly dying. Amaka was a natural entrepreneur. She ran a proficient provision store at the local market that was the envy of many. She had a way with people and a sharp mind for numbers. However, her success was her greatest sin in Segun's eyes. Every evening, the ritual was the same. The moment she stepped through the door, tired from a long day of trading, Segun would be waiting in the parlor. "Bring your phone here," he would bark, his voice vibrating through the expensive furniture. Amaka would hand it over with trembling fingers. He would scroll through every single call log. "Who is this Amaka that called you at 2 p.m.? Why did you talk to this customer for 5 minutes? What were you planning?" If her explanation didn't satisfy his paranoid mind, the beatings would begin. He wanted her small. He wanted her broken. He believed that a woman's only job was to stay under a man's shadow. In Segun's world, a woman with money was a dangerous woman. He often sat her down to deliver what he called the gospel of silence. He would pour himself a glass of expensive brandy and look at her with pure disdain. "Amaka, listen to me. You are going to destroy yourself with this you're trading. Women are not meant to make big money. It makes you proud. It makes you forget your place." Amaka would stay quiet, her eyes fixed on the floor tiles. She knew that talking back only brought more pain. "A woman is meant to sit under a man," Segun continued, leaning forward. "A man works, and he gives you small money for pepper and salt. That is how God intended it. This your store is making you think you are my equal. I will soon shut it down so you can learn how to be a proper Nigerian wife." Inside her heart, Amaka was screaming. She thought of her 4 boys, watching their mother shrink every day. She thought of her hard work and the sweat she put into her business. One evening, after a particularly nasty lecture, she finally whispered, "I reject it." Segun froze. "What did you say?" he hissed. Amaka looked him in the eyes for the first time in years. "I reject your words. I will make my own money. I will enjoy the fruit of my labor. I am not a slave." That night, the beating was the worst she had ever endured. The turning point came on a Tuesday morning when the phone rang. It was her sister from the village, wailing. Their mother, the woman who had taught Amaka how to trade and how to stand tall, had passed away. Amaka fell to her knees, her world shattering into a million pieces. Her mother was her only pillar of strength, the one person who prayed for her every single day. When Segun came home, Amaka told him the news through tears. Instead of comfort, she received coldness. "Why are you crying like a baby?" "People die every day," Segun said, barely looking up from his newspaper. They began to argue about the funeral costs. Amaka wanted to give her mother a befitting burial with her own savings, but Segun wanted to control that too. He didn't want her going to the village to show off her independence. The argument escalated quickly. Segun, fueled by a strange jealousy even toward a dead woman, raised his hand again. He beat Amaka until she couldn't breathe. As she lay on the cold floor, smelling the dust and her own blood, something snapped. The fear that had kept her bound for 15 years evaporated. She realized that if she stayed, she would leave that house in a coffin, just like her mother. "No more," she whispered to the empty room. "This is the very last time you will touch me." She didn't cry. She began to plan her great escape. The funeral of her mother was the smokescreen Amaka needed. She organized everything with a quiet intensity that Segun didn't recognize. After the burial in the village, she did not return to the Lekki house. She sent a message through her brothers. The marriage was over. She was calling it off. The news hit the community like a thunderbolt. After 15 years, people whispered. With 4 boys. Where will she go? Segun was furious. He didn't believe she would actually leave. He sent word back that if she left, she would leave with nothing. "Not one pin from this house belongs to you," he screamed over the phone. True to his word, he locked her out. He kept her clothes, her jewelry, and even some of the documents for her store. He told everyone who would listen that Amaka would be back within a month, crawling on her knees. "She has nowhere to go," Segun laughed at the local drinking spot. "She has no one to help her. She will taste hunger, and then she will remember that I am the Lord of her life." But Amaka was already in a small rented room in a different part of the city. She had her 3 youngest boys with her. The eldest was staying with her brother. She looked at her children and her empty hands. God, I have tried my best, she prayed. I am starting from zero, but I am starting with peace. Life was hard in the beginning. Amaka started selling small items by the roadside. Gone were the days of her proficient store in the big market. She was now a petty trader, but she did it with a smile. She was free from the fear of the evening phone check. However, she needed help with the boys' school fees, especially since the jam season was approaching. She swallowed her pride and called Segun. The boys need to register for their exams, she said calmly. Segun's response was a cold laugh. I don't have a kobo for you or those boys. Since you want to be a man, go and find the money. A few days later, while scrolling through a mutual friend's social media status, Amaka saw something that made her heart stop. It was a wedding invitation. Segun was getting married to a new woman barely 4 months after she left. The invitation was grand. He was spending millions on a new wife while his sons had no exam fees. The betrayal stung, but Amaka wiped her eyes. She saw the picture of the new bride. A young girl, looking happy and naive. Amaka felt a flash of pity for her. He thinks he has replaced me, Amaka thought, but he has only found a new victim. She closed her phone and looked at her boys. Don't worry, she told them. Your mother is a lioness. We will not beg that man again. The news of Segun's new marriage spread quickly, but the gossip that followed was even faster. The community watched as Segun threw a lavish party to show Amaka that he didn't need her. But Segun hadn't changed. He tried the same tactics with the new bride. He demanded her phone. He told her she couldn't work. He tried to lock her in the golden cage. But the new generation of women was different. The new wife lasted exactly 5 months. One morning, the neighbors heard shouting and the sound of breaking glass. The new wife didn't take the beatings in silence. She fought back, packed her bags, and left in the middle of the night, taking half of the expensive wedding gifts with her. The marriage crashed so hard that the whole of Lagos was talking about it. People began to say, power, there is power in a woman's departure. They realized that Amaka wasn't the problem, Segun was the poison. While Segun was busy fighting his second wife in court, Amaka was busy on her knees. She had started a small catering business from her tiny kitchen. The food was delicious, and her reputation for honesty began to bring in big contracts. She didn't have time for the drama. She was too busy building a new life from the ashes of her old one. Segun, ever the proud man, refused to believe he was the issue. The second one was just wayward, he told his friends. I need a more traditional woman. Within another year, he had married a third wife. He wanted to prove to Amaka, who was now becoming successful again, that he was still the chief. He bought the third wife a car and told everyone that this was the real love of his life. This marriage was even shorter. It lasted only 5 months. This time the woman's family came to the house with a police escort to pack her things after Segun gave her a black eye. The scandal was juicy and delicious for the local gossips. Segun was becoming a laughingstock, 2 failed marriages in less than 2 years. People started calling him the cage maker. Amaka heard the news while she was at a site inspection. She had moved from catering to real estate. She had used her savings to buy her first plot of land in a developing area. When she heard about Segun's third failure, she didn't celebrate. She simply felt a deep sense of relief that she was no longer that woman on the floor. Her children were growing tall and strong. They were working part-time jobs to help her, and the bond between them was unbreakable. They were a team, and God was their captain. Years began to pass like pages in a beautiful book. Amaka's small business had turned into a major firm. She wasn't just selling provisions anymore. She was a developer. She worked hard, waking up at 4 a.m. and going to bed at midnight. She invested every kobo wisely. She didn't buy expensive lace or gold. She bought land. She bought 3 plots in a prime location, now valued at over 20 million naira each. The transformation in her physical appearance was a miracle. When she lived with Segun, she looked like a woman in her 60s. Her skin was dull, her eyes were tired, and she was always hunched over as if waiting for a blow. But now she looked 20 years younger. Her skin glowed with the radiance of a woman who knew peace. She dressed in simple, elegant clothes that showed her confidence. People would see her at events and fail to recognize her. Is that not Amaka, Segun's former wife? They would whisper. She looks so pretty. She looks like a young girl. She was no longer the slave of Lekki. She was Amaka the mogul. Her 3 oldest boys were now in the university, studying professional courses. They adored their mother. They saw her as a hero. She had provided everything Segun had refused to give, and she had done it with dignity and grace. One afternoon, Amaka received a call from a lawyer. He wanted to discuss a property deal. When she arrived at the high-rise office, she found not just the lawyer, but a man sitting in the corner, shrouded in shadows. As she sat down, the man turned around. It was Segun. But it wasn't the Segun she remembered. He looked frail, his hair had gone completely grey, and his clothes looked slightly tattered. The chief had fallen on hard times. His businesses had crumbled due to his bad reputation and several lawsuits from his ex-wives. He had lost his big house in Lekki to the bank. He was staying in a small apartment and was looking for a way to settle his debts. He had discovered that the mystery developer buying up land in his area was actually Amaka. The scandal was that Segun had come to beg for a job. He didn't realize it was Amaka's company until he saw her name on the door. He sat there, trembling, the power dynamic completely reversed. The man who once checked her phone and beat her for small money was now looking at her with pleading eyes. "Amaka," he croaked, his voice losing its thunder. "I didn't know it was you. You have done so well for yourself." Segun didn't just want a job, he wanted his life back. He looked at Amaka's smooth skin and her expensive watch. He saw the way the staff respected her. He realized that she was the good luck that had left his house years ago. He cleared his throat and tried to use his old charm, though it was now rusted and pathetic. "Amaka, my wife," he started. Amaka raised a hand. "I am not your wife, Segun. I am Mrs. Amaka, the CEO of this firm." Segun winced but continued, "I have realized my mistakes. Those other women were just gold diggers. You were the only one who truly cared. Look at our children. They are in university now. They need a father. They need us to be together." He actually had the nerve to propose that she should come back to him so they could stay together and take care of the children. He spoke as if he were doing her a favor. He suggested they merge her assets with what was left of his name to rebuild his empire. He wanted to move into one of her new houses and have her take care of him in his old age. It was the most scandalous and insulting request she had ever heard. Segun tried to shout to reclaim his old dominance, but his voice cracked like dry wood. "You cannot talk to me like that. I am a chief and the father of your children." Amaka didn't blink. "A father provides. You neglected. A father protects. You beat. You are just a biological accident." She pressed the intercom. "Security, please escort this man out. He is disturbing my business." But Segun refused to move. He gripped the edge of her heavy mahogany desk, his knuckles turning white. "I am not leaving. You owe me," he screamed, spit flying from his mouth. Amaka didn't flinch. She simply nodded to the 2 burly security guards who entered. When they moved to grab his arms, Segun began to kick and wail, losing every ounce of his dignity. He clung to the doorframe, but the guards were younger and much stronger. They eventually bundled him up like a naughty, oversized baby. His legs dangled in the air as they carried him through the lobby, past the whispering staff and shocked clients. He was still screaming threats as they reached the entrance and literally threw him outside the main gates. He landed in the dirt, his expensive but faded traditional attire stained and torn. The animal who predicted her downfall was now a laughingstock lying in the Lagos dust. Amaka watched from her window, feeling a deep sense of justice. She had finally achieved her ultimate goal, total and complete independence. Amaka did not let the encounter with Segun distract her for long. She had bigger dreams to chase. She went back to the market where she once had a small store and bought the entire building. She transformed it into the Mother's Legacy supermarket, a proficient and modern shopping mall. It became the crown jewel of the neighborhood. Every time she walked through the aisles, she smiled at how far God had brought her. She made sure to hire women who were in difficult situations, giving them a chance to earn their own pepper money and more. She told them her story every Monday morning during staff meetings. "Never let a man check your phone to see if you are breathing," she would say. "Make your own money so that if he ever raises his hand, you have the shoes and the car to walk away." Her supermarket became a symbol of hope. People didn't just come to buy milk and bread, they came to see the woman who had defeated a lion. Amaka was no longer the tired, old-looking wife of a chief. She was a fashion icon, a business mogul, and a pillar of the community. She was living proof that power belongs to the one who refuses to stay down after being beaten. Her children worked at the store during holidays, learning the value of honest labor. Months after the office scandal, a tattered envelope arrived at Amaka's house. It was a letter from Segun, written from a one-room apartment in a poor part of town. He was sick and had no one to care for him. He begged for a small loan, promising to pay it back when things got better. He even tried to use the children again, saying he wanted to see them before his time was up. Amaka read the letter while sitting on her balcony, sipping fresh juice. She felt a flicker of pity, but she remembered the nights she slept on the floor with a swollen face. She remembered her mother's funeral and how he beat her on the day she was mourning. She realized that helping him directly would only invite his toxic energy back into her life. She was done being a victim and done being a savior for a man who didn't want to change. She handed the letter to her personal assistant. "Don't give him a loan," she said calmly. "Instead, take some food items and a small cash gift from my foundation's needy fund. Deliver it to him anonymously. Tell him it is from a stranger who heard he was hungry. I don't want him to know it's from me, and I don't want to thank you. I just want him to stay in his own world while I live in mine." The story of Amaka and Segun reached its final chapter with a grand celebration. It was Amaka's 50th birthday, and she looked like a woman in her 30s. Her 4 sons, all successful and handsome, stood by her side as she cut her cake. The party was held at a luxury hotel, and the guest list included the biggest names in Nigerian business. There was no mention of Segun. He was a forgotten shadow in her bright world. During her speech, Amaka looked at the young women in the crowd. "They told me I was going to destroy myself," she said, her voice clear and powerful. "They told me women were not meant to make money. But look at me today. I rejected the trash. I rejected the slavery, and I chose my own happiness. I have my land, I have my business, and most importantly, I have my peace of mind." She raised her glass of champagne to a standing ovation. "To every woman out there, keep the energy going. Don't wait for a man to give you small money. Go out there and take what belongs to you. You are not a slave. You are a queen." The room erupted in cheers of "Power, power." Amaka smiled, knowing she had finally won. She was pretty, she was wealthy, and she was free. The marriage was a lesson, but her life was the testimony.